So today I'm going to be talking about exercise and its relationship with college success. So I'm going to be exploring the question, is there a relationship between regular exercise and GPA? And if so, why would this relationship exist? And is it more of a causation or a correlation? So some studies in the past, one by Purdue and then one by North Carolina State, have shown that in these two universities, this relationship does exist. In Purdue, students who exercise 16 times a month earned a GPA of 3.1 or higher, while students who used the gym at least 7 times a month had an average GPA of 3.06, while the average student is a little bit lower than that at 3.01. And then in North Carolina State, they concluded that for each hour of physical activity a week, GPA went up an average of 0.06 on the 4.0 scale. So in order to kind of study this at Texas Tech, I made a survey, and this was sent to Texas Tech students, and it was intended to discover the extent of the relationship between GPA and exercise here. So here's a couple pictures of the questions in the survey. So some of the drawbacks to the survey was that I asked for a GPA range rather than an actual GPA, just because I felt students would be a little bit more comfortable giving out a GPA range. And then also I didn't necessarily define exercise. I left that up to their own interpretation. Nor did I define time spent exercising each day. So a student who spent 20 minutes each day jogging would be a lot different than a student who spent, 2 hours a day lifting weights or practicing football or something. And then there were about 144 people in the survey, and there are 40,000 at Texas Tech, so it's a very small sample size, and also most of the respondents were freshmen. So the results of the survey showed that out of the 144 total respondents, 27 of those worked out 3 or more days per week, while 41 worked out 1 to 2 days per week, 63 worked out less than 1 day per week, and 13 did not work out at all this entire semester. And so if you break that into percentages, you can see that 40.7% of those who worked out 3 or more days a week scored in the range of 3.5 to 4.0, while a much lower percent, under 25%, of those who did not work out at all scored in the range of 3.5 to 4.0. And then the opposite is true for the lower grade sections, where the amount who scored less than 2.0 increased from 3.7 to 15.4% as students worked out less. So some things to conclude from the survey: it did show a correlation between higher GPA and more exercise, and this is kind of what is expected because of what we've seen in past surveys done at other schools. But what this survey doesn't show is the reason for the correlation, and that's what we're going to explore in this interview with a student that's about to begin. All right, so what is your initial reaction to the data here? As you can see, I'll explain a little bit. We surveyed a bunch of students here, and the amount of students who get a GPA in this highest range of 3.5 to 4.0 decreases the less they work out, from 3 or more days to not at all. And then the amount of students that receive the grades less than 2.0 and in the range of 2.0 to 2.5, that increases the less that they work out.
Okay. I think that's really interesting, actually, and I never really thought of it that way.
Have you noticed during your time, here at Tech, that people like your friends that are more active, do they tend to do better in class?
I would say that I noticed that a little bit. I feel like a lot of my friends who work out regularly are also the ones that I will text, and they'll be like, can't really hang right now, I'm studying. And then my friends that don't work out, they're always able to hang out. But I don't really know what their grades are. So I don't know exactly what that means about how they do better or worse when it comes to working out.
Do you feel like this is something that applies to you? Like, the more you work out, the better you do in school? Because obviously, like, as you can see here in the data, there are outliers, because some students will make really good grades, like in the 3.5 to 4.0 range, even though they don't work out ever, while some people will score below 2.0 while still working out regularly.
Yeah, I'm not really completely sure. I definitely feel like working out is a huge stress reliever. It definitely helps me when I've got tons of homework, because it gives me the chance to like get my mind off my work in a healthy way. And right now I work out pretty regularly, and I would say I do pretty well in school, but I bet it's kind of more like person to person on how it affects them.
Okay. Well, one of the main goals with my project here is to understand why the correlation exists between GPA and exercise. Do you think that there's a reason why students who work out more often tend to receive higher grades in school?
I know that I definitely I'm able to concentrate more on my homework when I've been working out, but I also feel like there's something about exercise that energizes my mind, I suppose, so that I'm able to concentrate so much better on my homework once I'm done exercising. But also when I work out really hard, I'm just tired from the workout, so it's harder to concentrate on my schoolwork. So I feel like exercising could really affect the mind either way, especially if it's like a really intense workout. But I also feel like students who take the time to work out regularly are probably more likely to spend more time studying too. Most of my friends that do have bad grades, they're pretty lazy and don't study. And they also don't work out because the same thing, they're just lazy. So it may just be that type of person who, if they work out regularly, they're more likely to study. And if they don't, if they don't work out, they're not gonna study.
All right. So one of the things that I thought was really interesting that this particular student says was that something about exercise energized her mind so that she could study more. And this related to a study I found from 2011, and it was a study on mice. And this was a Japanese study that studied two groups of mice, that one group was forced to work out and one was not. And the mice who were forced to work out regularly were, on average, had higher levels of glycogen in their brains, which means that their brains were more primed for learning, because this is a substance that increases your brain activity, so this would let them be able to learn more. And this is caused by an activation of a gene called MTS1L. And so this kind of shows that exercise does, in a way, prime the brain for learning. And then one of the other interesting things that she said was that she felt like it was a certain type of student who was more likely to work out, and that same type of student is also more likely to spend time studying. And this related to a different study I saw, which was in the Medicine and Science in Sports and Exercise journal. And the study was called The Association Between Study Time, Grade Point Average, and Physical Activity Participation in College Students. And this study was actually really similar to mine, except it added one more factor, which was the amount of time studied per day. And it had a similar sample size to my study. Theirs was 141, while mine was 144. And what their study showed was that students with a GPA greater than 3.5 were 3.2 times more likely to work out regularly. And then students who studied more than 3 hours per day were 3.5 times more likely than other students to work out regularly. So the students who were more likely to study were also the students who are more likely to work out regularly. So there's not just a relationship between GPA and working out, it's a relationship between GPA and working out and study time. And what this shows is that the relationship between working out regularly and grade point averages may not have a direct relationship, but working out does affect GPAs because students who work out more often are able to spend more time studying, which then helps them get better grades. So working out on its own will not just magically help students get better grades, but it may give students the boost that they need to spend more time studying, which will then allow them to get better grades.